Yeah, I have a couple Slido uh questions, and then I have a couple of videos too. So
Oh, perfect.
yeah, I just sent Dennis an updated version um of my presentation because I had the wrong title. I piece presentations together all of the time depending on the audience, and I the one that I said, I was like, I was getting ready to like, figure out how to share it, and it still said like attorneys on it, and I was like, okay, no.
I totally get it.
Everything else was changed. Um, when was the last time the group had a ICWA, like probably a year ago, an ICWA training, like
Yeah,
on
I think
ICWA?
the
Okay.
last one was probably about a year ago.
Okay.
And if any of our volunteers are interested in a copy of your slides after the training, is that something that's okay? Can we share that with them?
Yeah, so I sent Dennis the PDF version of it all,
Oh, perfect.
so he has it.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, I just if it's possible, like I think the only thing, because I use a few slides that I would have to get, like I have to get permission. I would get permission if you don't post the training anywhere, right? Or you don't post this anywhere.
Sometimes we post the trainings on our YouTube, but if there's something that isn't allowed to be shared, we can just not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You don't
would
have
just
to
have
post
to
it.
ask. Yeah, I would
Mhm.
just, and I'm sure she'd say yes, but I just want permission from somebody as presented with before for a couple of the slides.
Hi, Stacy.
Do I need my camera on today or can I turn it off?
You don't have to
All
have
right,
it.
thanks. You can see I have my pajamas on still.
You can't even tell, it's a small screen. Good morning, Leanne. Oh, you have your puppy. You're still on mute. Oh, I can't hear you, Leanne. You're on mute still.
I was seeing how well you read lips. Actually, I couldn't find the secret button. Are you in the office or at home?
I'm in the office today.
Okay.
We're working on getting everything packed up here, so.
Oh,
Right.
how are you getting settled at home?
It's good. Yeah, we're, still unpacking and getting everything. For the most part now, I think we have almost everything out that we can right now. And then while we're doing the floors in the basement,
Yeah.
it's just in the garage.
Well, and then you got to figure out where you really want it because you don't want to have to move it around again.
Exactly.
You had to join the meeting, huh? Yes.
He's ready to learn.
I got my days mixed up in the week because I had signed up for the online CRB stuff for their conference that they had. And by gosh, missed it. So
Oh,
I think there's some recording of it, so I'll have to check that out.
I think there is. Yeah.
But there was a couple of things that I was interested in, some of it, no, but
Mhm.
some of the stuff they were talking about, I was.
Yeah. Good morning, Marie. I guess afternoon almost.
Are you Dennis today?
I'm Dennis today, even though
Okay.
the name says Vanessa. I figure I've met all of you already, so. I should actually look and see how many people we have signed up for today. I know everyone usually likes to show up right at noon.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, how are you, Dennis?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Dennis, aren't you on PTO today?
Uh, yeah, I got to look back home a little bit earlier than I thought. So I don't forgot to. I wasn't sure if I had told you guys that, so I figured I would just hop on.
Do you want to take the rest of your PTO and not do the training?
I no, I don't mind, honestly. It's fine.
Okay, I will log off then and let you do that. I believe I already made Adria a co-host, so she should be
Oh,
able to screen
perfect.
share and do all of
Need your things in there.
that. All right. Have a nice training. Bye, Leanne. Bye, Lee. Bye.
Thanks, Naomi. And if y'all want to just type your names in the chat just to make sure I can make sure you guys get credit for attending, that would be helpful. Thank you. So we'll get started here in a couple more minutes. We'll just give people some more time to trickle on in. But just a quick reminder that this Saturday is our volunteer brunch. And then also this Saturday, our office is going to be moving into our new office space over the weekend. So just make sure, keep in touch with your advocate coordinators if you have case meetings planned within the next couple of weeks. Just get in touch with them to make sure that if you're planning on meeting in person, it might have to be over Zoom. I'm not quite sure how long it'll take us to get fully set up in there. And then for the remainder of the month, this next CE will also be over Zoom. I just wanted to make sure that we had enough time to actually get our training space set up, get everything situated, and that we have enough space to accommodate everybody. So for the time being, it will just be Zoom CEs for now. And with that, we are at noon, so we can go ahead and get started. We have our presenter today, Adria. She is with the state, and she is going to speak a little bit more about some of the upcoming changes to ICWA courts and how those are held.
Great, thanks. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'll share now, and then we can get started. We have a small group, so I'm just gonna probably send some questions your way here and there. Hopefully that works for everybody. Okay. So I titled today's presentation ICWA and ICWA Courts Advocating for Tribal Children and Families. My name's Adria Cortes. I'm a member of the Sioux State Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians, and I'm from Boyne City, Michigan. I moved out here to Oregon for the third time in January to take a job as the ICWA analyst for the Oregon Judicial Department. Previous to this position, I worked for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde in their tribal court. I was a CASA in Yamhill County, and I also worked for Oregon Department of Human Services as a young adult program coordinator. So around older youth in care who were transitioning into adulthood. I worked with the Runaway and Homeless Youth Program. Some of you might be familiar with Rosemary Ivandetti, Carrie Van Dyke, Matt Rasmussen. I worked with all of them when I was at DHS. And since then, I spent 5 years at the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, where I focused primarily on tribal and state court child welfare, as well as ICWA courts. And I worked for the National Judicial College for a year as well. And there I focused primarily on tribal court work. So I'm really excited to be back here in Oregon. We just finished up the first full year of the grant that I was hired under, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I have some learning objectives out for you. You had a presentation on ICWA about a year ago. I'm going to go over some of ICWA and ICWA just to lay some groundwork. But then I'm going to go into talking about ICWA court specifically, including Marion County ICWA court, which just started last month, and give some information about that. And then conclude by providing examples of resources and supports that are out there for you to use. I sent a PDF version of this to Dennis, and it has a number of links and resources that you'll see. We'll go through some of them, not all of them, but you know they're there for you, and my contact information is at the end. I think there's a small enough group, so if you have questions along the way, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat box, but feel free to chime in, unmute yourself, and we can go from there. So before ICWA was passed in 1978, there's a number of things that happened within the U.S. around removing Native children from their homes as part of governmental policy. There is a really good website that is linked here around the federal Indian boarding school initiatives. There's some reports there. There's a lot of resources. If any of you ever have an opportunity to go to a boarding school presentation, I would recommend it. But of course, it's also, I would also caveat that it's very traumatic. Oregon in particular has a boarding school history. Many states do. And then there was also the Indian Adoption Project, which encouraged removal of Native children from their homes. The Child Welfare League of America, as you know, exists today, obviously differently, as well as the BIA. So there's been a lot of advancements and improvements, but there's still a way to go. So this is a list of disproportionality rates among American Indian, Alaska Native youth in the representation in the child welfare system. So you'll see that Oregon is at about 3%, which means there's a 3% disproportionate rate for Native children that are in the foster care system versus Native children in the general population. So the rate is this is from 2021, but I believe these rates are still today right around the same. So here is a map of where the 9 federally recognized tribes of Oregon are and relative to one another, relative to where we are today. In Marion County, as you may know, Marion County sits on the ancestral land of both Siletz and Grand Ronde. They're very active in the planning for the ICWA court that I'll talk about in a little bit. And we're hoping to also have a land acknowledgement recognizing them that is placed in the court. So I guess with a small amount of you on, I'm just wondering, you know, what your level of knowledge as we go into the next section of ICWA and or ICWA is. So, you know, one being, if you want to put it in the chat, like one being relatively like unfamiliar, 5 being like I'm really like I feel like I really have a good sense of ICWA. If you want to share that in the chat, 1 to 5, 5 being the most information about ICWA, 1 being the least, that would be great. Okay. All right. That's helpful. Thank you. Okay. So ICWA is a federal law that was placed in 1978, or ICWA, which is the state version of the law, was enacted in the 2020-21 legislative session. And so essentially what that means is that for the most part, with a few differences, the state of Oregon took the ICWA federal statute, federal law, and put it into Oregon law. And they did this for a number of reasons, but primarily to show the support of Oregon in applying and implementing ICWA in child welfare cases. The legislature requires DHS and OJD to work together every 2 years and report on the number on a set list of numbers around ICWA in the state. And the most recent report was submitted just this last September. And so if you're interested in reading that, the link is on this slide. It'll take you right there, and you'll see and you'll see the numbers that we have. One of the issues that we're facing currently is just being able to collect the correct data. And so that is underway. Those efforts to collect better data are underway within OJD for sure, and I believe also DHS. So I'm going to just go over a few of the basics of ICWA. This is something that when I was in law school, I have a JD from Michigan State College of Law with a certificate in Indigenous Law and Policy. I did a whole semester on ICWA. So I'm going to do my best to give some of the major points, major parts of ICWA, but there's lots of resources at the end, and you can reach out to me anytime for even more. So but when does ICWA apply? It's when there's the reason to know that an Indian child as defined by ICWA is involved in an involuntary child custody proceeding in state court. So ICWA only applies to state court, doesn't apply to tribal court. And it applies when there's a foster care placement, termination of parental rights, pre-adoptive placement, or adoptive placement. So jurisdiction, guardianship, termination of parental rights. And it also is required in voluntary placements and emergency proceedings, as CASAs, the foster care system, that's where you're involved the most. And so that's where we'll focus this information. So the definition of an Indian child is an unmarried person who is under 18 and is a member of or a citizen of an Indian tribe, or they're eligible for membership and they're the biological child of a member of a tribe. So based on the evidence presented by DHS, the attorneys, it's the court that makes the findings as to whether or not the child is an Indian child. But if, as far as who is a member or eligible for membership of a tribe, it's the tribe or Alaskan Native village that has the sole authority to determine membership and standards for membership eligibility. So tribes as independent sovereign nations take a wide approach to membership, and we'll go over that too. So there's a couple different ways that tribes will define membership and eligibility for membership. Two of the ways are listed in this slide, but there's others that are out there. But the major two ways are a descendancy example. So which doesn't require a certain Indian blood percentage, but it does require that someone can trace their ancestry back to a citizenship role. And the citizenship roles are, defined by geographic area, and they'll be defined within the code of the tribe. So tribes will make their own laws. They'll have, their own judicial systems, and they'll have their own membership criteria. So the second example of how tribes determine membership is with a certain number of a certain amount of blood quantum. So that might be 1/2, one quarter, 1/8, 1/16. So it'll be a requirement that those individuals show that they are a certain level of descendancy from a full-blooded member of that tribe. So tribal governments, again, have the sole authority to determine the membership. There's currently 574 federally recognized tribes. As you may know, and hopefully you do, ICWA applies to individuals who are members or eligible for membership of a federally recognized tribe. And that creates a political relationship. If there are in this country state tribes that aren't federally recognized, individuals who are a member of a state tribe or state recognized tribe in Indiana, for example, or Virginia, that they're not considered under ICWA, they're not considered, they wouldn't be considered an Indian child because they're not a member of a federally recognized tribe. So the link that I provide here gives you a map to the Indian lands in the US. There's about 400 tribal court justice systems out of those 574 federally recognized tribes. As I said before, the membership criteria and the numbers of tribal members vary greatly. And governments are structured differently depending on the tribe, depending on the size of the tribe. But their own tribal law within the tribe determines how they treat in child welfare cases. So like I said before, ICWA is a federal law or ICWA is a state law, and it only applies in state court. Both of those only apply in state court. But in tribal courts, it's the tribes and their law that determine how they treat child welfare cases. So some tribes will take ICWA and utilize either ICWA in whole or parts of ICWA to codify how they treat child welfare cases. And then some tribes won't. Some tribes will be more traditional, culturally with their rules and their laws than other tribes. So they vary greatly. And then resources also vary greatly from tribe to tribe on what tribes can provide to their members, to the families that are involved in child welfare cases. And a designated list of agents for all contacts for all of the tribes is listed here too, a link to that. And that's updated, I think it's either quarterly or semi-annually, that website. Oh, and I want to take a moment to watch a video. So I'm going to stop share and then share again. And I have to share the sound.
Tribal sovereignty. It's a phrase you've likely heard before, but what does it really mean? Sovereignty is the natural right of a people to govern themselves. Sovereignty means that tribes operate as independent nations within a nation. And did you know that there are 574 federally recognized Native nations in the United States? All of these tribes have their own constitutions, laws, elections, and infrastructure designed to meet their people's needs. Their rights, lands, assets, and resources are their own. This is similar to how the United States government exercises sovereignty on behalf of its citizens. Tribal nations have been sovereign since time immemorial. Sovereignty is not granted, but rather it is recognized. The federal government recognizes tribe sovereignty through treaties. In order to make a treaty, two sovereign nations must come together, recognize each other's right to govern their own people, and create an agreement. With or without the United States, tribal nations are sovereign. But if you need more proof, the United States Constitution, in addition to hundreds of treaties and Supreme Court cases, has repeatedly affirmed tribes' right to govern themselves. Remember, tribal nations have always been and will always be sovereign. Treaties are the supreme law of the land. The United States government's frequent violations of its treaty obligations do not change that. Now that we understand what sovereignty is, why is sovereignty important? Sovereignty matters because sovereign nations know best what their people need. Tribal governments make vital decisions for their people related to healthcare, education, and economic development, among others. When Native nations make their own decisions, they are more likely to thrive. Strong, sovereign tribal governments foster strong tribal economies and nations. We honor and affirm tribal sovereignty. To learn more about why sovereignty matters, visit nativegov.org or treaty.
Okay. If you have any questions as we go through, please feel free to put them in the chat box. Let's see from beginning. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. I meant to do it from where we were. There we go. Okay. We can skip this slide. Okay, so as CASAs, your court partners, and so when we think about ICWA compliance and ICWA implementation, the major areas really are inquiry, making sure that the judge and DHS has asked whether or not there's any reason to believe that this child is an Indian child, and also making sure that it is revisited throughout the case. Because as CASAs, you know that there's different information, family members, others that come up during the case that weren't, the information wasn't known, people weren't part of the cases right from the beginning. And so just making sure that that is something that is stated consistently. And there's some jurisdictions around the country that will actually start out introduction to the case by saying things like, this child is not considered to be an Indian child. And then it gives everybody even when it's not an ICWA case. So it gives everybody the opportunity to say something, whether or not like they've discovered more information. And second, making sure that all of the individuals that should be at the hearing are, and that the notice goes to correct person at the tribe. Again, the link before, is really, it's not your responsibility as CASAs to do that, but like knowing that the tribe should be part of the case if possible, and maybe like asking questions around whether or not the tribe was notified and has the ability to be there at either virtually or in person at the hearing. And making sure services around active efforts, which I will go into just a little bit more, but making sure services are tailored and culturally appropriate. So I know that as part of the CASA training, you all get you all learn about the difference between reasonable active efforts. And the example that I'm going to use probably is the one that you might have heard before, but it's where reasonable efforts are that mom gets a bus pass to go to the services she needs to go through in order to be reunified and have the children returned back to her. And for under ICWA and active efforts, it's more that mom is given a bus pass and someone sits down with mom and goes through the map with her and make sure that she understands how to get to the places where she has to go, and really puts in that effort to ensure that she can be successful. Now, as CASAs, and when I was a CASA in Yamhill, I know that that active efforts is a gold standard for child welfare, and you're all there to do that extra step and make sure that resources are provided and that people know where to go when it comes to the different. I'm still on, right?
Uh,
Oh,
yeah, you
okay.
are. I don't think your screen is sharing right now, though.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm just talking.
It's all good.
Sorry. I was like, what happened? Okay, now I see it. Yep. Okay. So yeah, active efforts, making sure services are available, and that you all being part of the community, being involved with community organization, with your churches, that what's out there and what is available, and being able to really like inform from that perspective is important when it comes to assisting with those active efforts. And then the fourth one is around placement preferences, and that's there's placement preferences that are listed in ICWA and in ICWA, which work to like ensure that children aren't removed at those disproportionate rates that we talked about at the beginning of the reason that ICWA exists. And there is often instances where placements aren't even available, period, right? We all know that resource parents, there's a shortage, and there's often a shortage when it comes to ICWA placements. Here, one of the important things to remember, though, is that it is something that should continually be asked, and just being and also being asked, like, if there aren't placement preferences, what are some of those connection or means of connection to keep children connected to their tribe and their communities and their families, even if that placement preference isn't available. So, and then just general sort of guidance around ICWA, like making sure to seek and encourage involvement of the tribe when it's possible. Seek out bias training, making efforts to use proper language, and learning, about if you have an ICWA case, learning about the tribe. Most tribes have, all the tribes in Oregon have websites. Most tribes have pretty robust websites, and it's pretty easy to read up on like history and culture just by going on their website. So now I'm gonna go into talking about ICWA courts and other ICWA opportunities. Okay, so this is one of the most exciting things because you're all Marion County CASAs, and Marion County is the second little orange dot on this map that was just put up last month on the after Marion County started their ICWA court on the 16th. This is where all the other ICWA courts exist. There's a bunch in Minnesota. I worked with St. Louis County Duluth ICWA court. The judge there is also a judge at the Carleton County ICWA court up in northern Minnesota. The 5 principles of ICWA court include judicial leadership. How many of you can put it in the chat if you want, have worked with Judge Perez before? Yeah. So, when it comes to, thanks for, oh yeah, thanks for also alerting me to share again. I should have seen that. I apologize. So, when I came on in January, and one of the major deliverables for the grant that I'm working under is to expand ICWA courts. The information that I received, was that Judge Perez was amazing, and that he was interested in ICWA court. He had talked about it before. You likely, most of you probably know Shannon Dennison if you've done any work with ICWA or any training around ICWA before. And so when I talked to him about it, of course, he was immediately like, yes, he wanted to do it. So we started conversations at the end of February. And then, we're able to get the ICWA court up in October. So the judicial leadership part of this is really important because it is a court, and it does take a big level of collaboration and cooperation between all of the court partners. But because it's a court, it really needs that judge that says, let's do this, let's try this, let's work through this. And Judge Perez is just such a great example. I worked with ICWA courts in other parts of the country. Many of them have that strong judicial leadership. And then some courts that haven't quite gotten up to be running yet, that it can be a barrier depending on how court systems run, how judges interact with one another. But really, when it comes to ICWA courts, having that judge that says, let's try this, let's do this to improve outcomes for tribal children and families, that's really key. And then looking at the data, making sure that the way that everyone's approaching these cases is working. There is research out there that shows better outcomes for cases. So more reunification, quicker time to case closure when there's two things that happen early and often in the case, and that is the engagement of mothers and the engagement of tribes. So when working with ICWA courts, that's a real big focus is creating an environment and a process where both mothers and fathers, but the research shows that it's more impactful when it's mothers that are there often and consistently. But making sure that an environment that everyone is creating an environment that makes people want to come to court and makes people want to participate. So having ICWA training and having the ability for everybody to learn about ICWA together, both the spirit of the law, which is a lot around the history and the reason for ICWA, but also like ICWA compliance and how to make sure notice and inquiry are done correctly, active efforts are done, and also that placement preferences are adhered to. And really, like what I had said before around active efforts, that gold standard lawyering and social work and advocacy just generally. Yeah, and like I said, ICWA Marion County is the newest court. I'm hoping by maybe next spring or summer there might be 2 more ICWA courts in Oregon. So as part of these court teams, you're part of the child welfare system. When I worked at DHS, my boss at central office back in, oh gosh, when was I there? 2013, 2014. My boss, would say, like, everybody thinks of the child welfare system as the agency, as DHS, but really it's bigger. It's the court system. It's, it's the attorneys. It's CASAs, it's resource providers. So you're part of that child welfare system. And when the court can bring everybody together, it allows for more families to get to court, connecting the families to the services, which I talked about before, some things that you might know about in the community that others don't, and the ability to work with tribes and include tribes no matter where they are in the country. All right, so I have one more video. So I was on WebEx for the first Marion County ICWA court because I was down at the ICWA conference in Canyonville. And so when I was on the WebEx, I took a little snip of the screenshot. But you'll see like the judge isn't wearing a robe. He isn't sitting up on the bench. He's sitting at the same level as the parties there. And that's just one of the ways that the effort to make the court a different type of environment, one of those efforts. So I don't know how many of you have seen the video for that Judge Perez did, but I'm gonna show it now. So let's see, I'll stop share here. And I'll share.
Yeah, my name is Manuel Perez. I'm the circuit court judge here in Marion County in the juvenile department, and I will be the one that will be overseeing the ICWA court. ICWA stands for Indian Child Welfare Act, and it's a law that places additional requirements on the court when there is a Native American child involved with the system. And so the ICWA court is just to deal especially with cases that involve Native American children. We want to make sure that we are doing things right. And so we've decided that we'll have informal reviews more regularly than a regular case, where we can make sure that the families and the children are receiving all of the resources that they need from the worker, from the community, so that reunification can be achieved, if that's possible. A normal case is reviewed by the court about 3 times. Once we have jurisdiction, once the court finds that the state has proven that the family needs these kind of help. We would see them at 4 months, we would see them at 9 months, and then we would see them about a year down the road to see how the families are doing. And that's what we've been doing so far in all cases. But we don't think that that's enough for Native American families. The statute requires active efforts as opposed to just reasonable efforts to reunify the family. And I think that applies to the court as well. We need to be making active efforts to review the case, to make sure that the agency is doing what they need to do, to provide the services for the family so that they can reunify. I think sometimes more contact with the court, more reassurances, more reviews, more basically asking the worker, are you doing enough? Can't you do more? What about this? And it's kind of a team effort, so that you got all these people working together to try to get the goal of putting the children back with the family. Prepare for something different, and also to be open to telling us what it is that they need. That's the whole point. What do you need? What can we do to help you achieve that? The other thing is that they should be prepared to hear people giving them, clapping for them, saying and congratulating them for the good things that they've done. Because a lot of times you don't get strokes for the things that you're doing well. You just come to court and the court yells at you for like the things that you haven't done. That's not the whole point at all. The whole point is to acknowledge the work that they've done, and then ask about barriers that need to be overcome, and telling them or asking the people that can help overcome the barriers, how can we help them overcome the barriers? hopefully the worker will have like the action plan that they're working on. What are we working on now? We can review it. We can review how the family's doing, how the worker is helping them achieve that action plan. Sometimes the attorneys don't know what the action plan is. I want to make sure that they know so they can help the persons comply with that action plan. Let's move forward. You know, every day lost from being with your child is one that you could never recover. It's a work in progress, so the first session is not going to be as you know, the finished product that we're looking for, but eventually we would like to have like a song or drums to begin the court. We're also going to have flags, hopefully from all of the 9 Oregon tribes in our courtroom. I can tell you that I'm not going to sit on the bench. I'm going to be wearing a coat and tie, sitting in front of the folks, and kind of taking away that mystique of the judges above, higher than us. We're just all the same team, trying to get the same result that they hopefully they want, which is to get the children back. Every month might be a little bit different, might be a little bit better, hopefully a little bit better than it was before. But the bottom line is we want folks to be welcome from day one.
Okay, so that was you know, a really I don't want to say last minute, but Judge Perez was super into having this video done, and we put it together pretty quickly. We're hoping to do something that, you know, could be used statewide, but this is something that was sent out to many of the parties that were involved or that are involved in ICWA cases currently. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I really like watching it. He's just so great, and it is a work in progress, right? The first ICWA court last month, there was issues with the microphones. Marion County, the court started using WebEx to have tribal partners appear, and having the WebEx in the phones. You know, there were not like huge issues, but there will be improvements around that going forward. So we'll continue to meet with all the court partners and get feedback and talk about how to improve the process. So the work that is being done at the ICWA court is part of a state tribal partnership grant that OJD received in 2023. I was brought on in January 2024. And my coworker, who you might know, Jane Cooper, wrote the grant, and she did an awesome job with it. She really laid out clear deliverables, which makes my job easier. And one of those deliverables is the ICWA court, expanding them beyond Klamath County, which started in 2022. And then we're also focusing on data. The ICWA report that I talked about earlier is one of those, the parts of the data, but we're also putting together an internal ICWA dashboard for the judicial department, where judges and court staff will be able to go on and get data around the ICWA cases they have in their jurisdiction. We're hoping to have all of our court partners involved in putting together an online on-demand training, which will be comprehensive for everybody, but also allow different court partners to go more in depth about their roles. So as CASAs, you'll likely be hearing more about that in the near future. We have a subaward under the grant to the Klamath tribes. and to fund a couple of positions around preservation and family stability. And so we're working with the tribe to get we're finalizing that subaward that comes directly out of this grant. We'll likely support Marion County ICWA Court research around the ICWA Court. We're putting out a solicitation RFP for researchers that will work with both Marion and Klamath counties. And then we're looking at ways we can put out contracts to support best practice for attorneys. And then also to support peer mentors and other support, like under other resource providers within the ICWA Court. Oops, skipped one. All right, so there will be opportunities for you as CASAs around, around data and research. When you ask questions, when I'm doing these trainings for CASAs, this all becomes part of informing how we're looking at the work done around ICWA, especially within the court system in Oregon. And then you have an ICWA court now in Marion County. So at any given time, you might be part of that ICWA court, even if you're not now. Are any of you involved? I was going to ask that as a question, but are any of you in the ICWA court right now? You can let me know in the chat. Or you can no. Okay. There was somebody who came, and I know that I think there's one or two CASAs on the cases, but that's it. All right. And then, as we get going with the ICWA Court, and there's maybe like some identification of needs, we have funding in our grant to put out subawards and contracts. And here's a number of resources that are available to you, which have more information about the tribes in Oregon or ICWA courts. Turtle Talk blog is from my old law school. It focuses on Indian law generally. So all of whether it's tribal law or federal Indian law, but there's specific resources on there around ICWA. So it's a great website if you have more information, if you want more information about either just tribal or federal Indian law generally, or what's going on, different tribes or ICWA. And that is all. So I'm hoping that you all have a bunch of questions and we can have some conversation.
I just had a quick question.
Yep.
So I do our pre-service training for our new volunteers as well. And so I was wondering if it would be okay if I kind of stole a couple of those slides in there
Absolutely.
I always get a lot of questions surrounding ICWA when I bring it up.
Yep. And I think I have, there's also, I'm guessing you also have some questions because around, active efforts and reasonable efforts. And there's, I think, a publication that I didn't put in that I can send you as well. That is like specifically around active efforts.
No, that would be perfect. Because I do get a lot of questions about that as well.
Yep.
And we're
the
slide deck.
I'm sorry, what?
Will we be able to get that slide deck with all the links?
Yep. So I sent Dennis the PDF.
Yeah, I think I sent it out to all of you, the ones who signed up using the Sign Up Genius link. But yeah, I'll send that to you right now.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So Marion County, I believe, has 12 or 13 cases right now. And out of those, I think they just got like maybe 2 or 3 recently, like really recently. So they were around 10 when we started the ICWA court.
Adria,
Yes.
in the ICWA court with Judge Perez, who actually makes the final decision about placement? Is it Judge Perez or is it the tribe?
Yep. So that's a really good question. And I will say, I should have said this before about the ICWA court. So the ICWA court itself is a monthly review, and it's informal. So there's not an expectation for CASA reports, for caseworker reports, but everything, all the reports and all the updates are done informally, orally, and there's not like like an official record. So the hearings that would determine those placement preferences, being shelter, being the shelter disposition, reviews permanency, the decision of where the child is placed is the judge's decision. So there will be, if the placement preferences aren't followed, DHS will ask the judge to make a good cause finding to deviate from those placement preferences. And so the judge has to either say, yes or no. I am, and most of the time it's yes, right? And so someone will say, we'd like to deviate from these placement preferences. There is just no resources available, tribal resource families that are available. So the judge will say, yes, I find good cause to deviate because there are not resources available, right? Or because there's a higher need, or, so there, whatever reason, but that is something that finding is made by the judge as part of the record. The tribe would take a stand, right? So the tribe would be there to request a certain placement, but it is up to the judge in the state court ICWA cases to decide.
Another question I had, suppose we have a kid from, say, Montana, who's in the foster care system for some reason here in Oregon.
Yes.
How do you work that interstate and intertribal correlation?
Yep. So that happens a lot. Most of the cases in Marion County aren't with Oregon tribes. So the tribes are part of the hearings. They're a party to the case, and they appear by WebEx or on the phone. They're noticed. They hear. They get all of the information. So they would get CASA reports, they would get, the court reports, they get all of that information. And they also, can make recommendations. And they're very much typically a part of the process. And in the last hearing, for instance, the tribal representative, a tribal representative from a different part of the country, was talking about how the child had just been able to come up and visit and talked about that, and right. So they're still a part of it. I know that DHS will coordinate visits with tribes for children who are have family there or are working to stay connected. So it would still work out. There's also there also is the request to transfer cases from state court to tribal court. So a tribe might make a request under ICWA to transfer a state court ICWA case to the tribal court. And then for that, the judge would either they would either accept or deny that request. And if they deny that request, which hasn't happened in Oregon, then they would state on the record why. So that happens too, especially in Marion. So Grand Ronde, will request that cases be transferred to Grand Ronde Tribal Court from Marion. And I think they probably do that. I would say maybe like once or twice a year.
That was in my next question. My question was, so I have grandchildren that have the percentage of the, I guess you would say DNA that allows them to be in the tribe of Grand Ronde. And one thing my daughter and I discussed was, if something happens to them, they would go to a tribal family member, even though they would not be familiar with them. Grand Ronde specifies that the first placement would be with, one of the family that is of tribal blood. And so
Yes.
apparently Grand Ronde has very strict, I guess, they're very strict about placing of their tribal members.
So you bring up a good point, because the placement preferences, under ICWA exist, or ICWA will also look to the placement preferences if tribes have them. So some tribes don't have them, like you just said. Grand Ronde has them, so they'll work with Grand Ronde to and work with the tribal representatives from Grand Ronde around those preferences.
If the tribe requests the case be moved from state to the tribe, is DHS and CASA still involved, or?
So probably not. CASA wouldn't be involved.
Okay.
DHS may be involved as a courtesy. I don't know that I've ever seen, so there is like the courtesy worker situation that happens with DHS. I don't know whether like 100% that would happen, depending on, what tribe it was, and whether they were in state or out of state, and whether they kept the child in state or out of state, right? Because the child, just like the child could be in state court but be with a Montana tribe or a Florida tribe or Michigan tribe, like at the same time, they could be under the jurisdiction of a tribal court, but still be residing here, right? So that's possible as well, but probably not for CASA.
Okay, well, CASAs are appointed by the court.
By
so
the
if
state
court
court, yeah.
is not involved,
Yes.
I would think we would be relieved. Okay.
Yep. But I mean, I know that that tribal representatives are often on calls with, California, because there's, kids that are placed there. So yeah, they would stay involved. Maybe.
You might have mentioned this earlier, but how was Marion County selected to be the second ICWA site?
It was because we heard that Judge Perez was interested in, and it wasn't anything like, honestly, it wasn't anything that was, it was really because of that judicial leadership and his, and him wanting to do it. And also I would say, there's a lot. So that's the main reason, but there's a lot that is set up in Marion County, like with having an ICWA unit, right? Like that really lends itself to having a court. It's probably one on the small size, right? So if there have been other jurisdictions that have talked about, especially from a DHS perspective, because we talk about courts, right? And but with DHS in their regions, like there could be 2 regions that are in, or there could be multiple regions, or one region with multiple courts, right? So we're actually talking about how many cases are in a court, and anything like probably lower than Marion is probably not worthwhile to set aside time just for ICWA cases. So having enough is definitely a criteria. Like having a substantial number of ICWA cases is a criteria, but there was a lot that was set up well. So yeah.
Just curious, Andrea, why so many courts in Minnesota?
There is a lot tribes, and they have a lot of ICWA cases in Minnesota. So it makes for it like means that, you know, it's really needed. Klamath, you know, the majority in for Klamath County, majority of cases are Klamath tribes. Klamath tribes does not take jurisdiction over any of their tribal member children. So if they're in child welfare, they're in a state court. That's different than Grand Ronde, where Grand Ronde might have children in both in the tribal court and in the state court. And so for Marion, the majority of the cases are from out-of-state tribes, and there's a lot of reasons why historically why there is a number of families from other tribes around the country who are here in Oregon, and what that means in both Multnomah and Marion counties, and also Jackson, is that the ICWA cases are representative of not just Oregon tribes, but nationwide. So I know we're right at one, and I don't want to take anyone away from anything, but I'm here. If you
No, that's
want.
fine. Anyone have any last second questions? Or no? All right. Well, thank you very much. This was
Yeah,
really
thank you.
informative. I've been really looking forward to this presentation, honestly. So
Oh, great.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, great. And please reach out anytime. You have my contact information. CASA's near and dear to my heart, having been a CASA, and I also oversaw the CASA program when I was at Grand Ronde, and we had I think maybe 8 CASAs at the time. So I really believe in the CASA program, and would be excited to talk to you more.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks
For all you
everybody.
do. Okay, bye.